Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to the Equipping Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Natasha, and today I'm continuing my character study of Dwight Eisenhower. This episode's focus is on optimism and the role that it played in Dwight Eisenhower's leadership. Eisenhower said, "I am inclined by nature to be optimistic about the capacity of a person to rise higher than he or she has thought possible once interest and ambition are aroused." Optimism is important, not just for leaders, but for everyone. When we think optimism, sometimes we conjure up an image of a really positive person who keeps pushing through. And while aspects of that may be accurate, it has more facets than one may realize. Martin Seligman, one of the fathers of positive psychology, defined optimism as reacting to problems with a sense of confidence and high personal ability. I love this definition and perspective because there's a formula for what makes up optimism, which empowers people to assess why something is not happening. We all have times when we're not feeling the most optimistic, but the self-awareness that encourages us to look at a situation or future state with a sense of confidence and personal ability gives us the tools we need to move forward. If you're not confident or believe in your ability, how can you fix that? What needs to happen for you to show up more optimistically, both for yourself and others? We all know someone or multiple someones who seem to be negative about everything, and this can be tied to a few other traits. Confidence is key when it comes to optimism, especially if we look back at Seligman's definition of it. If a person is not confident in their own abilities or in their place in an organization or in their ability to be resilient, they're going to be less optimistic. I have a friend who is aggressively negative about everything, even things that are inherently positive and uplifting. I found myself getting more and more frustrated as we talked, but the psychologist in me was interested, so I stayed engaged, even though I knew going in that I always had to protect my energy before any of our conversations. As I got to know the person better, I understood that she lacked confidence in all areas of her life. She did not believe in herself or others and saw her interactions in the world as her being under attack always because she did not have the skills and mindset to interact in a different way in the world. Many of us also know people who have become bitter about their lot in life, and they lack any ability to be optimistic about their current state, and they believe the future will only bring more of the same nonsense. There's a line in a speech by Your World Within that goes, "It's like you've forgotten that up is even a choice." I love speaking with leaders about trust and how that is important for building and maintaining confidence and optimism within an organization. One of the common threads that I have seen in these discussions is that trust is inherently given without the need to quote unquote prove oneself. And the concept behind this is twofold. So first, who am I that you have to prove your trustworthiness to me? And two, I'm not going to walk through life expecting everyone to disappoint me or betray my trust. I would rather believe in people and maybe be disappointed sometimes. This is truly where trust aligns with optimism. When someone is optimistic, we tend to trust them more. And we trust them more because if things go down, they're not going to point at it and say, "See, I knew it was terrible." They're going to find a way through, even if the situation is not ideal. One of the ways that people can overdo or misunderstand optimism is by using toxic positivity. Toxic positivity has always been around, but we've only labeled it within the past couple of years with the rise of toxic self-help. Think of a person you know who, no matter what, is overly positive to the point that you think they may be out of touch with reality. That is toxic positivity, presenting a frame of mind that is all sunshines and rainbows and ignoring or not taking into account the parts that are ugly or difficult. Regardless of how we want to view something, we need to acknowledge to ourselves and to others that we understand and can see the nuance and challenges. And sometimes we just need to acknowledge that something sucks. None of those things remove our optimism. They're just an acknowledgement of the path forward. But knowing that those things are there or could crop up at any point, it allows us to better prepare ourselves and others for those things. We have the opportunity to put tools in place to support our efforts and our mental well-being when things go off the rails. I have always been interested in the concept of having a mental well-being toolkit, much like we have resources ready and in place for other areas of our lives. I know the things, the times of the day and times of the year that change my energy, and when my energy changes, that impacts my mental well-being. So with that knowledge, I ensure that I have other things in place so that I have ways to recharge or re-inspire myself to keep moving forward. While that does not eliminate every depressive episode that I experience, I know that there are tools that on my worst day I can reach out and grab to get me back into the game mentally. Sometimes we just have to move through tough and mucky parts of life, but there does come a time when we're stuck and we need to know how and who can help us get out of it. One of the things that I really appreciate about Dwight Eisenhower is his optimism. When you look at his life and career, it's easy to see how he seemed to have such confidence in himself and his ability, which led to his optimism. It takes a lot of effort to maintain optimism when your work assignments are long and tedious and take you far away from your family or leave you holding the fate of the world in your hands. Now, that may be a bit dramatic for some of us, but it certainly was not overly dramatic for Eisenhower. In her book, How Ike Led, his granddaughter, Susan Eisenhower, makes the great point that while he was dealing with things and making decisions that literally had international impact, he still, quote, retained a genuine capacity for empathy and kindness, which belied or survived the hard and painful decisions he'd been compelled to make, end quote. One would not be able to remain open and empathic without optimism. If you do not believe in the good in things, then what is all of this for? Eisenhower said, without confidence, enthusiasm, and optimism in the command, victory would scarcely be obtainable. We all face things that tear us down and take shots at multiple aspects of our lives. And those things will tear us down over time, no matter how resilient you are. But an optimistic mindset can help you get through tough situations and maintain confidence in your own judgment. One of my favorite quotes from Mike about optimism is, optimism and pessimism are infectious and they spread more rapidly from the head downward than in any other direction. I love this quote because it highlights the fact that feelings are more infectious than the flu and they will have physical impacts on you. Other people will catch those feelings too, and it can cause damage to the whole organization. It's a reminder to mind your mindset because it may be the linchpin to your physical and psychological success and to the success of your organization. Optimism is not something we will necessarily physically demonstrate at all times. Everyone has days and times when they're just not feeling it. But optimism is not a temporary thought. It's a mindset, and it is continuously cultivated throughout your career and life. There are many things that can enhance our optimism. First, when you find yourself in a negative headspace, consider two things. The first is how far you've come and how that has built a strong foundation for you to move forward. The second is to consider just the facts. Don't do anything with those facts, just acknowledge the facts. Those two things allow you to see what you have accomplished and pull confidence from your experience and view the reality of the situation without painting an overly rosy picture or catastrophizing it. You can also cultivate a practice that empowers you to identify your mindset before it gets out of hand. I personally have a robust morning journaling practice, and I can identify my mindset in the first few minutes of this practice. It's already a space where I am writing, so I can keep writing to figure out why my mindset is off and come up with some ideas to improve it throughout the day. This is not a fail-safe approach, but sometimes the awareness allows me to rearrange my day in a way where no one else has to be impacted by my feelings or mindset. I think we all have days like that. But this practice can be reflected in multiple self-care practices. So it doesn't just have to be journaling. It's about finding points of reflection so you can take measure of where you are mentally. Eisenhower said, I firmly believe that my mannerisms and speech in public would always reflect the cheery certainty or victory that any pessimism and discouragement I might ever feel would be reserved for my pillow. So it's perfectly natural to feel those things. It's very normal to feel those things. But where you express them says a lot about your leadership and how you show up. The character study on Eisenhower will continue, and next week I will talk with executive coach Dwayne Dwyer about what optimism looks like for today's leaders. Thank you for listening to this episode of Equipping Leaders. This season, there is an associated blog for each podcast episode, which can be found on my website, natashacheyenne.com, under Leadership Journal. My website also features other leadership development content, such as frameworks, book recommendations, a weekly newsletter, and other downloadable content. You can also follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha and on Twitter and Facebook at Natasha Cheyenne. Join me next week for another episode.